So Mr. Mike Pompeo has come out with a new book and it's filled with bombshells. Here today to talk about this with us is Martin Pengelly. I'm Jessica Burbank. This is The Conversation. Martin is a breaking news editor for The Guardian in the United States. Thank you so much for joining us, Martin.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let's get into it. One of the first things that Mike Pompeo has talked about that you all have reported on is the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. He said this was false outrage. He said a number of things about it, that he was framed as the Saudi Arabian Bob Woodward and martyred for his bravery, criticizing the Saudi royal family. But in reality, it's Pompeo's belief that he was an activist who supported the losing team. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, Pompeo is speaking with typical pugnacity, which is what he does, about the Khashoggi affair. He does deplore the murder of Khashoggi in very strong terms, very strong Pompeo terms. But he is, it's one of his vehicles for attacking the US and the world media for how they covered him at the State Department and how they covered Donald Trump in the White House. And so he says Khashoggi wasn't really a journalist, he was an activist. And he says this is what the Middle East is like. Nobody should have been surprised by what happened in the Turkish consulate. And today, in response to a Washington Post statement from the Washington Post publisher Fred Ryan that was very, very strong in rebuking what he said, and I guess in response to Khashoggi's widow, Pompeo came out and said he would never apologize for being more concerned about US servicemen abroad, which obviously in Saudi has relevance to why the US is close to the Saudi regime and why the Trump administration chose to stay close, which is what he describes on the page. But it's expressed in very forceful, very pugnacious, very inflammatory terms, as we've seen today.
Right. Do you see this as, the widow has stated, these are people talking about, her late husband to make money? Or do you see it as Pompeo sort of correcting the record and establishing his sort of view on the matter?
Well, I think we knew it was his view. I think it's for money in the sense that this book is a book to sell, a book for Pompeo to sell. And a book, I'm not sure if he's got a huge advance for it, but it's a book to sell. It's a book to make his mark on the nascent Republican presidential primary, which most people expect him to enter. It's not the only book like this that's come out already. Mike Pence is out. Tom Cotton, of all people, came out with one before almost immediately saying he wasn't going to run, but Ron DeSantis is coming out with one next month. It's what you do. You sell a book, you sell your memoirs, and in this case, you publish it when the primary is beginning to form. So in that case, the widow is entirely correct. It's a book to make money, and it's a book full of this Pompeo a sort of attack dog politics that plays to the Republican base. He's very, very, very harsh about the mainstream media and about Democrats, obviously, throughout the book.
Right, Nikki Haley was one of those who was the target, of what he wanted to convey in this book, sort of framing her as this political opportunist, making these meetings with the chief of staff of the White House. And Haley has spoken out and said some things about Pompeo as well. What do you make of his angle on Haley?
The angle on Haley, one thing I would make of it would be that when we ran that story last week, Maggie Haberman of the New York Times swung in with some tweets about the story and was saying that her own reporting had dug up the rumors that Haley was trying to replace Mike Pence on the ticket in 2018-19. It was 2019 when Trump came out and denied that it was true, which made you think it probably was if he came out and decided to deny it. In one sense, accusing a member of the Trump administration of political intriguing is like accusing water of being wet. It seems very, very likely. Haley is also expected to announce the run for president. She's come closer than even Pompeo into saying she's going to do it. She hasn't declared yet, but she nearly has. I liked, not to make a partisan point, but I thought it was very well put. I thought Ben Rhodes, Barack Obama's foreign policy advisor and speechwriter, made a very good point in response to our story when he tweeted that Pompeo and Haley were engaged in a fight to the death to see who can raise 1% support in the primary. they're not very likely to be in the front rank. Now, if I'm wrong and one of them is in the front rank and one of them is the next nominee or the next president, I will happily eat those words. But it is a lot of jostling. I think I called it that in print somewhere. It's jostling before the primary. Haley has also published 2 books since she left the Trump administration, so she's in the same game.
And how much do you really see these books that people are coming out with where they're telling their side of what happened during the Trump administration and their essential stance within the Republican Party? How much do you think these books are swaying voters?
I don't know if they'll sway voters. I don't know if they'll sway voters even in the primary. I mean, general election voters, they ain't reading them. Sadly, I am. It's what I've started doing for my living. There's not much in there that you would read as a general voter. As a Republican primary voter, polling so far suggests maybe no one's going to pay much attention to these ones because Trump and DeSantis dominate it so much. I did notice the Washington Post released a review of Pompeo's book today, and I thought it was accurate. It is a surprisingly nasty book in the sense that he is attacking both his opponents like Haley or his prospective opponents, and of course his typical Republican targets, trying to make the splash. So his having picked a fight with the Post over Khashoggi seems pretty distasteful to me, but it's probably the aim, really. I mean, he's called his book Never Give an Inch, and he's not giving an inch to the Post today in his response to their statement. That's what this is. It's almost like performance art in a way.
Yeah, anybody who's written about Pompeo with their autocorrect on for their spelling has noticed that it frequently autocorrects to pompous, which I don't think is a coincidence at all. It's quite poetic. He did talk about John Bolton in this book, saying that Donald Trump had called him a scumbag loser. Can you say some more about the Bolton affair? And is this connected to, I don't know, he talked a lot about, Pompeo did, his position as Secretary of State, potentially being considered also for position in NSA and Secretary of Defense as the National Security Advisor to Trump. He wanted to hold all of these, it seems, and was bragging that he was considered for them. And Bolton sort of became a target in this book as well.
I think in terms of the multiple jobs thing, Pompeo, he probably is boasting that it was raised with him. He says he turned down the idea of being Secretary of Defense, and he says the National Security Advisor offer was never really a starter. But he's still making sure he puts that he could have done all 3 or 2 at once. Bolton is his target because Bolton wrote his own book in summer 2020. Or late summer 2020, The Room Where It Happened, named after a Hamilton song, I think. I'm not a Hamilton expert, which revealed a lot that he wasn't supposed to reveal. The Trump administration tried to stop him publishing it and couldn't. It revealed things like how Trump treated autocrats like the Chinese leader and so on. It was seen as damaging to Trump in the election year in 2020. So Pompeo really goes for Bolton over that. He calls Bolton himself some pretty bad things. He at one point says he compares him to Edward Snowden, but says at least Snowden had some principles. It's pretty. It's a sort of full frontal assault on Bolton. John Bolton has said he might run for president, which would be he'd be fighting, I would think, without me. I don't mean this as any personal criticism of John Bolton, but you'd think a figure like John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, would be lucky to get close to 0.5% in the base. But it's said he might run as a presidential run to try and stop Donald Trump. So this is all Republicans fighting in a sack like ferrets at the moment, actually. And it would be perhaps the same before a Democratic primary if the nomination was open, there wasn't a president involved. I don't think it would be quite as vicious if it was Democrats going at it. This is Trumpian politics. That was what the Washington Post book review very wisely said. This is a very Trumpian affair. It's nasty already.
Yeah, entirely nasty. He was aggressive, it seems, throughout the entire book, but unusually polite about Mike Pence. Can we make of anything that politically?
Well, they both committed, I suppose the right word would be evangelical Christians. They're both strongly Christian. Pompeo, unlike Pence, I've read Pence's book too. Pence carries himself much more mild-mannered way, even though he's obviously got sharp elbows. Pompeo they share the Christianity. They seem to have shared a kind of alliance within the Trump administration. They are two people who very rarely were in the Trump administration all 4 years. VP and Pompeo was CIA director before he was Secretary of State. So they're two survivors in that sense. I don't doubt for a second Pompeo would turn his fire on Pence in the primary if he needed to, but in the book, relatively speaking, he doesn't. He also relatively doesn't go after Donald Trump. He has been trying to put some daylight between the two of them, but mostly Trump gets away with it. He's not aiming at him. I've said to a couple of colleagues that it's called Never Give an Inch, and when he's describing how he interacted with Trump, a couple of times he describes having given an inch to Trump. So that is the measure of the book. It's a very politically targeted and chosen book.
It's so fascinating. Really appreciate your perspective on all of this and the good work you're doing reporting breaking news with The Guardian. Can you tell our viewers where to find more of your work?
Yeah, theguardian.com, and I tweet at Martin Pengelly, which is pretty much the only social media platform I use.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We've been witness to the proliferation of hate crimes throughout the United States. A lot of folks who are quite anti-democratic, who would like to live in a white Christian nationalist state. And this is very concerning, but there's some good work on the other side of this. Today, we're joined by Eric Ward, who has had 3 decades of leadership in community organizing and philanthropy, working with the Western State Center as the executive director and a senior fellow with the Southern Poverty Law Center. And in 2021, won the Civil Courage Prize and the first American to do so, which is perhaps signaling to us that we've had quite the dangerous proliferation of anti-democratic rhetoric and hate crimes in the United States. Thank you so much for joining us today, Eric.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
So recently we had Solomon Pena run for office as a GOP candidate in New Mexico and has recently been arrested in connection to crimes committed, the shooting up of several houses of Democratic members of Congress and local government as well in New Mexico. Can you tell us a little bit about this case?
Absolutely. So we have a former GOP candidate who is running for state representative. His name is Solomon Pena, and he lost that race, meaning the majority of that district decided not to choose him. And in his frustration and anger, he responded by hiring other people to attack and target the homes of Democratic officials and their families. And we know now that Solomon Pena actually participated in at least one of the attacks. This seems to be a growing trend within politics, largely driven by the rhetoric of the GOP that is telling America that if we do not submit to them through the ballot, that they will use the bullet in order to subvert the American will. And this is what we've seen in New Mexico. And I think it's important to put it in context. This is part of a long strand of political attacks. Before that, we saw the attack on the home of former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, where her husband, Paul Pelosi, was injured so significantly that he had to be hospitalized. It is also part of an ongoing series of harassment of elected officials, primarily Democrats, but not all. This includes also the stalking of congressional representative out of Washington State, Pramila Jayapal, right, who had individuals driving around her home screaming out profanities that were both racist and sexist, threatening to harm her. And it took her hours to get support from local law enforcement and from federal services. Elected officials are under attack. And if elected officials are under attack, the American public is not too far behind.
So it's been elected officials that have been the target of these attacks, but it seems to be that they're attacking a larger system at play here, right? If they're not winning these elections, they're claiming they're rigged, as he did in the Albuquerque Journal reported it, that's Solomon Pena. And then we have, the January 6th attack as well. A lot of these are stemming from lies that our democracy is not functioning, but it's coming from a deeper place, that because they don't like the outcome of the election, they're standing up against it, saying that it was rigged. It's undemocratic at its core. And do you see that as the reason for these attacks?
Absolutely. I think we're seeing several things that are driving this political violence. The first is the embrace by Republican leadership of the big lie. This idea that there is a secret elite, right, that is at work globally in order to attack and destroy, right, white Americans. It's known as QAnon or the replacement theory, right? A host of names. But we should understand that that big lie has been used to not just entertain folks, but to subvert American democracy through violence. So we have watched since 2017 a growth of political violence. We should remember that in the midst of the George Floyd protests, right, still not understood by the American public are the loss of 19 people who were killed around the country, right, in relationship to these protests, the majority African American. Now we know some of these individuals were targeted through gun violence. We know some were attacked physically, and we know some were attacked using physically using vehicles to strike them or run them over. We have no full accounting in this country of the real level of political violence, but we do know some things. We know that the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project has told us, for instance, that paramilitary far-right activity in 2022 is on track to exceed the level of activity reported in 2021. The violence is very real. And it is attempting to do three things. The first is mission-driven political violence that seeks to subvert, right, the American democracy through intimidation and fear. The second are spontaneous acts of violence that are taking place at protests and in the public square. And then the third that we are witnessing is political rhetoric that is grounded in violence, despite the fact that countless studies tell us each and every day that the irresponsible rhetoric of violence by elected officials drives a direct correlation to actual violence in the streets and the communities of America. This is an attempt to terrify the American public, and it is an attempt to try to undermine or to send this message that the federal government is unable to protect American citizens. That's the point of that violence.
Oftentimes, it's someone's first touch point with the criminal punishment system, our penal system in the United States, it's the police. And we've seen time and again, the police, letting in folks, members of far-right groups, pass through the subway turnstiles without paying, seeming that they're on the same side. In many occasions, we've seen oftentimes police officers participate in these rallies. How does that affect our ability to respond to political violence in the streets?
It breaks down community trust. And when we lose community trust between the community and law enforcement quickly is unable to provide community safety. That credibility by law enforcement is important, and it's being lost in very significant ways. It benefits the white nationalist movement. I'm not here to say every law enforcement officer is part of a far-right organization. What I'm saying is their unwillingness to distance themselves from those organizations and the tactics and the rhetoric cost them credibility within their communities. And that has a direct relationship to crime statistics, to the harm that's being done. At the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the Department of Justice and the federal government to rein in and to ensure that the American public sees law enforcement as an unbiased agency right? That is not functioning in the bias of the political partisanship that is happening in our society. We're not seeing it. And in that vacuum, paramilitaries and those promoting political violence are stepping in. And the victims are Latinos and immigrants and Muslims and Jews and everyday Americans who have to go to work, who have to go to school, and are being subjected to this violence.
I think it's really important and interesting as well that while their actions are manifesting as, this anti-democratic sentiment, really it's about white Christian nationalism and wanting their idea of what a way of life should be, right? Imposed upon other people. So it's not so much, they believe in monarchy or some other careful analysis of political science. They believe in another form of government. It's more so coming from a place of hatred and racism and believing in these conspiracy theories. So how do we combat that specifically, more so than just having a bipartisan announcement, we condemn these acts of violence? What other steps can we take?
We have to take some specific steps. So the first step is we have to speak up, right, verbally, and defend American democracy. Right? We cannot defend democracy unless we name that it is a priority for the American public. Poll after poll consistently shows that the majority of Americans, including a significantly growing number, a percentage of white Americans, believe in the idea of an inclusive democracy, one that moves all of us, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, national identity, forward together to a society where we can all live, love, worship, and work free from fear and bigotry. The white nationalist movement understands that the majority of America opposes its idea of exclusion and political violence. It understands that history and our time is on the side of those of us who believe, right, that we can manage a democracy as a diverse society. So here's what we have to do. We have to continue to prepare to deal with the violence. Will be with us for some time, and we have to beware of attempts to drive us inside, right, and internally based off of that fear. So we have to come together. Second is we have to demand that the American government stands up, ends democracy. Where is the American government? Where are our federal agencies? And we have to talk to our elected officials and make sure that they are doing their job. The third is this. We have to get to know our neighbors. If there are folks who are seeking to rip us apart, right, and they're going to use the idea that we don't know one another, demographic anxiety, to fuel that division, the way we protect ourselves is to strengthen our relationships with our neighbors. We do that not by focusing on our politics, but the values that align us together, the idea of opportunity, the ideal of community, the ideal of safety. Let's start and remember that our values bind us together much more strongly than our politics, and that's where we need to start.
Thank you so much for joining us, Eric. And your work has proven that this is indeed possible. You've worked towards this end successfully on multiple occasions. Can you tell our viewers where to find more of your work?
Absolutely. People can find the work of those of us committed to democracy at raceforward.org and westernstatecenter.org. I look forward to seeing everyone there.
Thank you so much.
Get some! Welcome one and all to the Young Turks with me, John Ederola, stepping in for Anna Kasparian, and there's Cenk Uygur. In cosplay is Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, how's it going?
Of course. Hi, John. Wow, suit and tie.
Just for you and the audience and the show.
I don't know.
And it's a contract.
Has this ever happened? Just you and me in control of the main show? Like,
I don't know that we've done
two
it.
renegades, just running
Young
from
crazy
the law.
kids, making it up as we go along, spreading fake news. Not especially. No, we've done bits and pieces, but I don't know. Anyway, I like it. Let's make it a trend, everyone. Hashtag John and Fran forever. Let's do that. But anyway, I'm very excited to have you on the show, not only for this first hour, which I'm gonna be leading, but the second hour and the bonus episode, which you will be leading. And while we have a ton of interesting news, some VP stuff, Ticketmaster drums, what are you looking forward to in the second hour?
I don't know. An FBI was on a Russian oligarch's payroll. That's cool. Also, nothing. Yeah. I'm looking forward to your hour a little bit more. My hour, for some reason, feels real serious. But no, we're gonna also look at what Iowa is doing to its public schools. And spoiler, it's bad. So
yeah. When was the last time you heard good news having to do with public schools in America? Well, anyway, maybe we'll try to make it fun in a little way. We'll figure out a way to throw in the Greta voice or something. So anyway, don't worry, everyone. We're gonna make this fun. We're gonna make this approachable, but more importantly, we're gonna make it substantive, and hopefully we're all gonna learn something through the experience. But anyway, we look forward to your comments, of course, as always during our social breaks. But with all that said, Francesca, why don't we get this thing started?
Yeah.
Speaker Kevin McCarthy has booted 2 Democrats off of the House Intelligence Committee, and that might just be the beginning. Now, of course, if you've been following American politics, you know that he did this as like a stop to Fox News, to the Republican base. They want to see strike back because the Democrats had the temerity to throw Paul Gosar and Marjorie Greene off of their committees for encouraging violence against their colleagues, literally calling for the assassination of Nancy Pelosi, AOC, Joe Biden, a number of different people. In comparison to that, Swalwell and Schiff existed. They were, and thus they needed to be punished. Here's how Kevin McCarthy tried to provide cover for this purely partisan thing that he did. I have rejected the appointments of Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell for the House Intelligence Committee. I am committed to returning the House Intel Committee to one of genuine honesty and credibility that regains the trust of the American people. That is definitely his focus. I don't expect that you're gonna be able to read that full letter, especially on mobile. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on one of my favorite excerpts. He says, I cannot put partisan loyalty ahead of national security, and I cannot simply recognize years of service as the sole criteria for membership on this essential committee. Integrity matters more, says the guy that put Marjorie Greene on Homeland Security. No, but like, look at that. So every single person knows exactly why he did this. And I mean both the people maybe on my side of the aisle that are against the move, as well as everyone on the right wing who is cheering this. They know why he did this. They wanted him to do this, and they're very happy that he did. The idea that he did it because he cannot put partisan loyalty ahead of national security is utterly ridiculous. Nobody actually believes that. Nobody on their side cares. They got what they wanted, Francesca, and isn't that nice for them?
Yeah, and it bodes terribly for this entire country. Look, and I'm not gonna say like, that Rep Swalwell and Adam Schiff were like, my heroes, but they did lead the country through impeachment hearings, right? Love them or hate them, believe they were necessary is what I did. I don't know why I'm speaking like Yoda, but I am. Look, the real thing is, yeah, let's just stick with this. The real thing is, it begins a snowball, right? And it happens in a lot of countries. In a lot of countries, the United States has turned its nose at, is like, their democracy is not quite perfect, unlike ours. But it's when your entire system, your legislative branch and your judicial branch are completely flooded with partisan picks. You go through political purges when your party is not in power, and you only appoint loyalists. Again, the lesson out of the Trump administration, I'm sure from Donald Trump himself and clearly from Kevin McCarthy, is we didn't have enough loyalists. Like, it wasn't that we attempted a coup on January 6th, it's that we didn't attempt it hard enough. It's that we had to go to the third rail, which is, send a bunch of radicalized Facebook dads at the Capitol instead of doing it through our bought and sold loyalist attorneys generals who are just randos, again, probably the same Facebook dads. You know what I'm saying? So this is, again, where the country is headed, and it all paves the way for a potentially successful parliamentary coup in the future.
Yeah, and it wasn't supposed to be like this. I think that the owner donors would prefer a system that didn't have explicit violence in the streets. The way it was supposed to work was through a combination of structural factors, gerrymandering, the overrepresentation of small rural states and all of that, combined with endless fundraising for Fox News and independent right-wing media, focusing on an ever-changing menu of ridiculous culture war topics. That was supposed to be enough. They were supposed to win based on that. They were supposed to dilute the rubes enough so that they would maintain power. And that in the end wasn't enough. Somehow the American people were able to see through a lot of this BS. And so instead they had to pull the coup card. And now we're all waiting to see if going back to business as was usual, the culture war, the demonizing trans people and the trying to strip the rights away from everyone, if that works in 2024, then they'll just do that. And if it doesn't, they'll probably try again for a coup. And they've got more of a ground game for that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously with all of that being said, the bad guys thus are Schiff and Swalwell. And again, I'm not massive fans of Schiff and Swalwell. They're not my guys or anything. But let's be clear about what is going on. They got Liz Cheney'd. They got Adam Kinzinger or whatever. They're not being run out of Congress or anything, but they stuck their head up. And thus, as long as the fascists don't get back in power, then you'll probably be okay. But if they do, then you're going to be on the literal enemies list. And that's where they find themselves. Now, they have responded to this. Eric Swalwell says it's political vengeance. It's too bad because that committee has always been a bipartisan committee, and he's taking one of the most precious pieces of glassware in the congressional cabinet and smashing it, and the damage is going to be irreparable. Also pointed out, comparing what's happening here to what happened with Marjorie Greene being kicked off of her committees. If a Democrat advocated for violence against another member of Congress, I would support getting rid of them. I think this is a terrible move on his part, and once again, showing McCarthy just catering to the most extreme elements of this conference. I agree, we are always incredibly clear to the point of being Buzz Killingtons that political violence is not acceptable. I too would call for them to be taken off their committees if that was the case. We do have to be fair though. So to be clear, the issue here is that they're being taken off of the House Intelligence Committee. It is ridiculous that this is happening in comparison to what happened with Gosar and Green, which seems very necessary. But to be fair, at least, they're not being kicked off of all of their committees. They're just being kicked off of that committee. Schiff is gonna sit on the Judiciary Committee. Swalwell will join him there and also be on Homeland Security. So they are not being stripped of all of their committee assignments. They are being stripped of that committee assignment though. So I don't know, Francesca, like there might be some people maybe who superficially agree with us or largely agree with us on a lot of stuff that think, oh, well then, okay, I guess this is the way things are. And so when we take control back, then we're gonna take all of their, but I don't actually want that. I'm not interested in that. I didn't see Green and Gosar being rightly punished as the establishment of like, now we can round them all up. it was extreme times calling for extreme measures. I don't like the normalization of people being kicked off of their committees.
No, I guess not. I mean, I guess their constituents elected them, even if they are low-key or high-key white nationalists. Sure, they deserve representation. I'm just remembering Kathy Griffin, a not elected representative, posting with a photo of a severed Trump head early in the Trump years, and how, oh my God, I can't believe it, right? And can you imagine if a Democratic legislator had done that, if a Kathy Griffin were in office right now? I mean, that's effectively, if you were outraged about that, that's what they've done. They're like, okay, so Marjorie Greene can call for violence, can actually actively stalk a congressperson like she did to AOC, that Gosar can go speak at a white nationalist conference, then tweet out a video of AOC dying. And yeah, they get these committee positions. It's important to note, obviously, that Kevin McCarthy has control of the Intelligence Committee, but not all of the committees, but he's gonna use that, where he can. And I agree with you, I guess in theory, John, that when our guys or like the not crazies get back into power, like I'd like to not do the exact same thing and do the political purges, except you kind of have to un-F the whole balance, right? I mean, this is, I think, why we're in the political situation we are in this country, which is that when Democrats come into power, they're so afraid of appearing partisan. They're so afraid of trying to, appeal to the center and be bipartisan, that they don't realize just how far right we've actually gone. So in order to un-F these committees, in order to un-F the entire system, you kind of do need to go through a certain amount of purge, right? You kind of, again, it's the ways that Kyrsten Sinema gets to still defend the filibuster when she knows it has only been used to drag this country farther and farther to the right, farther and farther into the hands of people with power and money, and farther away from working people's needs. Yeah. So I'm of two minds, because we don't exist in a vacuum.
I would say I think I'm of two minds, but in that I just think of those as being very different issues. Like when I say I don't want to come in and ban them all from the committees, it's not me thinking like, oh, well, I guess we won't because I want to appeal to people. No, I just genuinely don't want to do that. Like I actually have no interest in that. They should get the number of seats that they're supposed to have based on their representation in Congress, and let Kevin McCarthy choose which chuckleheads he's gonna put on there or whatever. Now, if they do the sorts of things that Gosar and Green have done, if they are advocating for political violence and that sort of thing, then sure, I would ban them, and you could probably come up with other standards that I would have for that. But not simply they didn't like Biden or whatever, like that's not enough for me. Right. Whereas with the filibuster, that to me it was designed, it has functioned as a tool to stop the government from being able to actually work at a fundamental level. But anyway, interesting conversation. Perhaps we'll be able to get back around to it. I do want to move on to one other representative though. Representatives Swalwell and Schiff are off of the House Intelligence Committee. Well, what about Ilhan Omar? Representative Omar has been in the crosshairs, mostly figuratively, of the right for some time. And they would very much like to kick her off of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Here she is talking about the possibility of that happening.
Kevin McCarthy's purely partisan move to strip us from our committee is not only a political stunt, but also a blow to the integrity of our democratic institution and threat to our national security. We are thankful to Leader Jeffries and House Democrats, and even some courageous Republicans for standing with us.
So Ilhan Omar, I think Representative Omar should say, is right to point out that most of the Democrats seem to be on board. We're gonna have to see, and there are in fact some Republicans who have said they are not going to go forward with trying to strip her of her committee assignment. This is gonna be happening, by the way, next week, possibly. Full House vote. Taking Representative Omar off of her panels will require a simple majority vote, but remember, the Republicans have a very narrow majority, and so you only need so many Republicans to cross over, assuming all the Democrats stay in line, for it to not work. So we have Victoria Spartz and Nancy Mace, Representative Spartz and Mace, saying they will not vote to take Representative Omar off of that committee. We also have lobbying going on behind the scenes for Representative Brian Fitzpatrick and Representatives Chris Smith. There are also a couple representatives who said that they are undecided at this point. Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee and David Valadao of California. If they all signed on, or if 3 of the 4 of those, I think, sign on, then the vote would fail. And presumably McCarthy would know that ahead of time and thus wouldn't have the vote at all. That would be, I think, a great sign of at least a little bit of sanity in the House. But Francesca, any prediction 1 week out from that vote?
I mean, it's good that people who've been working with Representative Omar are saying that they want to keep working with her. And look, this is where the rubber hits the road. They're actually doing real work. And so for me as a Republican, and again, I try to put myself in their position every day, especially a woman, a female Republican in Congress, like how, why, what, where, when, like, when you see that a minority in your party effectively held up government for a week until they got their way, which was, I mean, honestly, like just throwing a tantrum when you had business to do, when you had things to do, and now the speaker, the leader of your party, is capitulating to that little minority instead of you guys. It would bother me. It would drive me absolutely insane. And so I would vote to keep someone like Ilhan Omar on my committee and not go the way of Kevin McCarthy, i.e. the way of the crazies in the Freedom Caucus and this minority that wants to be listened to, even though they do not represent the majority of American people and they don't represent the majority of Republicans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, he wants to be popular. I mean, he just came through a rough time, so he wants to deliver. Fox News despises Representative Omar for reasons that I think should be obvious if you're familiar with American conservatism. And so they want her to be destroyed. That's what they want at the very least. That's the ground floor.
Yeah.
They'd love more than that. Yeah, and if you haven't been actively following American political news for a number of years, the reason that they would give, if they had to give a reason, and they don't really have to, they can just say Ilhan Omar, ew, we're gonna get rid of her, is that they don't like a tweet that she sent 4 years ago, I think it was, where she criticized the use of money by a lobbying organization. And I understand if you have a problem with the comment, if you think that she should have worded it differently, considering the longstanding anti-Semitic tropes of money and all that. I also think that we live in a country where money in politics is almost never talked about, and when you do, you're attacked. So I would provide a little bit of cover for more criticism of the immense amount of bribery that goes on in politics. But that's what it is supposedly about. Whereas Marjorie Greene was liking tweets calling for people to shoot Nancy Pelosi in the head. If you think that those are the same thing, then you're insane. I'm just gonna say that. I don't think you should be serving on a committee either. But that is the actual argument. I think that that's not really why. I think that she's a member of the squad, she's young, she's a woman of color, she's a Muslim. I mean, pick an identity reason. That's why they despise her and want to see her off the committee.
That's why she should be on the committee, right? The fact that her family are immigrants, right? The fact that it was a refugee. Like that is why we need this kind of representation of Representative Omar on the Foreign Affairs Committee, right? We need to understand the impact of our foreign policy and the wars that we create and the governments that we support, how those actually impact real people. So again, it's hard to take this out of the dog and pony show of the Republicans and Democrats and the who's got the committee positions. In a democracy that functions, that represents people, hell yeah, Ilhan Omar on this committee. There's no one better suited.
Yeah.
There's no one who understands the impact of US foreign affairs better than someone like her.
Yeah, and thus why they wouldn't want, like they're not interested in the effect of our policy. They're not interested in the victims of our policy. As she pointed out in the extended comments of her speech, which you can find online, she is the first person ever as a representative born in Africa on a committee that governs the policy towards that continent. That seems like a useful thing. Seems like you'd kind of want that if you saw the people living in that continent to actually be humans. And so I can see why that would be divisive. But anyway, those are the people potentially losing their spots. We'll see with Representative Omar that is coming up next week, and obviously tune in as we give you our analysis as that happens. But let's talk about one other individual One representative very safe on his committees, Kevin McCarthy, not feeling like he's back, like he has to, his arms are bound, he's got to take him off the committees. George Santos, currently serving on 2 committees. And Adam Schiff, who just got taken off of one of his, had some words about that, saying this is a Republican speaker on Kevin McCarthy who is seating a human fraud, allegedly human. George Santos on committees, a serial fabricator about every part of his existence. He's perfectly comfortable with it, which I think is a great point. Now, Kevin McCarthy wants you to believe that he's a responsible overseer of the Republican Party. And if it turns out that George Santos did anything, really serious, and apparently lying about the Holocaust and 9/11, that doesn't rise to the level, then he will take it seriously. He says, if for some way, when we go through ethics and he has broken the law, then we will remove him. The American public in his district voted for him. He has a responsibility to uphold what they voted for, to work and have their voice heard. But at any time, if it rises to a legal level, we will deal with it then. After the ethics committee, which I thoroughly neutered a couple weeks ago, gets done with him. I would fact check him. To be fair, they kind of voted for him. But they also, when they did that, thought that they were voting for someone with a successful Wall Street career who'd gone to this long list of schools, who was a pro volleyball player, who had gone through personal tragedies involving loss of family in the Holocaust and in 9/11, blah, blah, blah. And they probably thought that the person that they were voting for had never stolen dog cancer money. But Kevin McCarthy is forgetting that. And again, when Kevin McCarthy says, I have no power to remove him from Congress, I have been explicitly stating for weeks, I know that and I'm not asking you to. You clearly have the power and the will to remove people from their committees though, and you are choosing not to do that because you believe that Ilhan Omar's religious identification or a tweet from 2018 is somehow worse than lying about virtually every stated fact about your life. Francesca, what do you think?
No, I mean, it's just beautiful. Again, like I do think that the fact that they are not taking George Santos off these committees, that they're not really sidelining him at all is honestly, it's a little bit of consistency from the Republicans, which are like, we love liars. Liars are amazing, right? As long as they're lying for the right team, welcome, come one, come all. And I kind of feel like George Santos at this point is an op. Like I feel like he was designed to like just rub Republicans' faces in their own hypocrisy. He was a drag queen, Kitara Revanche. Are you kidding me? And they're still like, listen, once ethics is done with him, what can we say? What can we do? I don't know. Like, it's brilliant. It's brilliant to me. They are forced to embrace this liar who, again, maybe represented all these things that they supposedly hate. I think it makes him very endearing, the fact that he was a drag queen, and very cool. But so yeah, we'll see what happens. It's silly because he could probably be replaced by a Republican anyway in his district. But clearly they're too shook and they need all the help they can get with a slim majority in the House.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I hope that there locally they are recruiting the best possible candidate to take him out when he inevitably runs for re-election, probably under multiple different names for multiple different parties. And also bear in mind, as we go forward, Kevin McCarthy referenced there the ethics committee. If they come back with anything on George Santos, that is an incredibly passive statement, but probably an accurate one. Because we have no idea if the ethics committee is looking into him. I know like what you're thinking, well, there's been complaints filed and that seems like the responsible thing to do. Yeah, they have control of it. They just neutered it. Like, how do you know? And let's say it comes out in 3 months that we find out that they hadn't been looking into him. Was Kevin McCarthy gonna blush on air or something? Why would they be looking into him at this point? They have power. They can do whatever they want, and they are. Now, we're gonna take our first break, Francesca. When we come back though, Ted Cruz, massive hypocrite. Very rarely has his hypocrisy been so easy to track in real time, and we'll have an example for you after this.
Ice cream.
Welcome to the social break, one and all. Let's see what's been going on out there. Jenks left Tricep of Fury, which I will never get over that name, says Johnny Pie and Francesca tonight, sweet as ice cream. Well, it is Ice Cream Wednesday, right? Yeah, I have no concept of time nor space. Yes, it's Wednesday, awesome. Francesca, if you have any ice cream at home, you should have a little bit for the bonus episode. It's a tradition. Okay, let's see. Over in Twitch, Rune Doggy gifted 5 subs. Thank you, Rune Doggy, you're a good boy. Or non-boy, I don't know. But I just like dogs, that's who I am. Matt Gates on a white Ford Bronco says, go ahead, show us your triceps, Francesca. What? Is that now a thing that we standard show off triceps? You're not obligated,
Triceps.
Francesca. You're trying to identify which that is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a tricep harder.
She's a professional, everyone. Raw Bear Dragon says, Dragon Squad and Frantifa as main show. Yes, yes, a million times yes. Thank you so much. Okay, your boy says Pelosi put it up for a vote before taking Green and Gosar off their committee assignments. Well, yeah, you have to. And they had the majority, so in theory they could do it unilaterally, but I will always remind you that I believe 8 Republicans voted. I forget which one it was for, to take off of the committee. So it was at least somewhat bipartisan, more so than even the protection of Ilhan Omar is expected to be. Okay, let's see. Your Highness 420 Dragon has been with us on Twitch for 11 months and says, first, it's my B-Day. Happy B-Day.
Happy birthday.
Second, so the first time I saw any TYT programming, it was you and JR on TDR about 3 years ago. And the next day it was you and Fran. And I've began every day possible with you, sir, ever since. And I feel like I've grown so much because of you. So thank you very much, TYT. That is so nice, thank you. He watched me and JR, then he watched me and Francesca, and then he tuned into me and Brett the next day and he's like, I'll catch him on Monday. Anyway. Okay, let's see. Gabby, hey Gabby. Gabby says, yay with many, many, many A's. Johnny Ty is the best iteration out of all of Idaro's alter egos. And with Francesca here, it's the best possible hosting combo for a big news Wednesday on the main show. Hey, that's copywritten TDR, everyone. We're not moving that over here, unless I get power panel. Okay, let's see. In the Ethernet says, here for the show, ready to grind my teeth, fall into a righteous rage or two, and most importantly, laugh a bit. Not to put pressure on the host, but both John and Francesca tend to cause me to let out healthy laughter at some point. I'm gonna assume that that's more on Francesca than on me, but thank you very much.
Only healthy.
Only healthy, it is the best medicine. Tucker Farrelson, I wanna be very careful to not swear by accident, and I see what you're doing. Says, integrity, now watch Santos take a spot in the oversight committee. Oh, I'm sure he asked for it. Thankfully, he's only on minor, unimportant things like small business and science. I love that they said that. Anyway, we got more news. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Young Turks, everyone. I am John Arilla, that is Francesca Fiorentini. Francesca, I heard that before this show you filmed the last, at least for now, Twitchration Room. I just want to say RIP. I know a lot of fun was had, but thankfully,
so much fun.
The Bitchuation Room remains, I hear.
That is correct. Yeah, that's my podcast, The Bitchuation Room. If you like me, yeah, you can listen on all the things. It's on the TYT network, as well as my YouTube and Twitch channel, /FrannyFio, FRANIFIO. But yeah, Twitchation Room, RIP. There might be more at some point.
Okay.
We'll see.
I'd be down. We'll see. Okay, with that said, let's get into some more fun, starting with this.
This shifts from a political problem to a very serious problem of criminal liability. That was a mistake, but there's no reason to think it was anything but inadvertent.
What are you gonna do with Ted Cruz? I mean, like, we understand that there is going to be hypocrisy from Ted Cruz when it comes to his response to like Donald Trump's many egregious thefts of classified materials and Joe Biden. But when it's Joe Biden and Mike Pence, I mean, it's pretty similar. They were both vice presidents. They both willingly searched for the documents. They both willingly turned them over. To say that one is perfectly fine and the other is criminal neglect is an odd take, especially when Mike Pence has been giving every signal that he wants to run for president again. So it's not even like he's a non-political figure now. In any event, while the hypocrisy is clear, Cruz does have more to say about Joe Biden and the document scandal. Take a look at this.
This shifts from a political problem to a very serious problem of criminal liability and major crimes. And so the FBI needs to search the University of Delaware archives, and they need to search Hunter Biden's home and business addresses.
If you thought that he was going to miss an opportunity to bring up Hunter Biden, then you don't know Ted Cruz or the state of the Republican Party. Francesca, we've been tracking this document scandal now since back when you are on maternity leave. It feels like forever now, and they have never missed an opportunity to show themselves to have no principles whatsoever when it comes to literally any of this.
No, they openly embrace their own hypocrisy because they believe that their voters are too dumb to understand what hypocrisy is. That's it, straight up. They don't bother explaining it because they're like, oh, no, our political philosophy is it's okay when I do it. That's right, say it with me. It's okay when I do it. That's what Republicans, that's what they believe. They don't ever have to be caught out. Because if you believe that it's okay when you do it, well, then that's it. Then end of story. So I did it for the right reasons. You did it for the wrong reasons. There. Well, how do we know that? Well, it's in my heart. Well, how do you know when Trump was talking to Zelensky there, he wasn't putting pressure on him, to dig up dirt on Joe Biden? Well, I know what's in his heart. So it's what's in your heart. And it's okay when we do it. Anyway, we're the good guys, bad guys, good guys, bad. Like, what are we doing anymore? I just love like how breathless Ted Cruz's hypocrisy is, because Ted Cruz is a smart guy, ostensibly, right? He knows when to get out of a storm, and he's a selfish dude, and he is doing this for the likes. He's doing this for the lulz. He's doing this for the people. He's doing this for the crazy base. He's so performative in how he's doing it, and you can hear him just sort of like choke down. He understands hypocrisy, and he's choking sort of on those words. But he's like, nah, I'm sure Pence had a good reason, and but no, search Hunter Biden's car.
Yeah, I guess he's smart enough to know to say the code word. It's like saying 9/11 then it's sheer with Hunter Biden. He's smart in that respect. I guess he became a senator. I guess that's smart. I guess he understood on some level that he had one of the most punchable faces in America, so he caught a rogue possum, strapped it to his chin to cover up as much as possible. He's done some things that are smart, but I don't know. The true test of how smart he is going to be is if he becomes president, because all of this has been in service to that for years now. He's weathered all of the Trump years, hoping that someday he'll become president. I don't think his plan in that respect is as clever as he thinks it is. But in any event, while he believes, as you saw in that video, that they need to search everyone, everywhere, all at once, when it comes to Pence, who did effectively the exact same thing as Joe Biden, not the same thing as Donald Trump, as we'll get into, he has different recommendations. Watch this.
Just as an addendum to this, the news came out today, I'm sure you saw it, that former Vice President Mike Pence, a friend of both of ours, he's found some classified documents, I think at his home in Indiana, not in his office. What do you make of that? Is this different from the Biden story?
Oh, look, the Mike Pence story, it's still early. Mike Pence, and as you noted, he is a good friend, he's a good man. He's explained where these came from. What his office has put out is that in packing up the vice presidential offices, that there were a couple of papers that were classified that were inadvertently put with non-classified materials. That was a mistake, but there's no reason to think it was anything but inadvertent. That is very different from what Joe Biden has done. Joe Biden has given zero explanation as to how these classified documents got there. And in particular, he has given no explanation as to how he has documents from his time in the Senate.
I'm not the biggest fan of Joe Biden. I think that's been fairly clear. who thinks he intentionally stole them and then stashed them in a box next to the Corvette? Like, who thinks that? Nobody thinks that. Look, could he be more forthcoming? Maybe, I don't know. You guys all think that he doesn't have a functioning brain and he sleeps all day. So why would you expect that he would know where the documents came from? The reason that he probably can't say he knows why the documents are there is because he probably doesn't know why the documents are there. My guess would be that similar to Mike Pence, they packed up the office and brought the stuff home. The difference, the clear difference, is not between those two. Their cases seem very similar at this point, both in number of documents, relatively small, and the apparent lack of intent to steal it, the willingness to search your residences and offices on your own terms and then give the documents that you find back rather than just burning them or whatever. Whereas with Donald Trump, he was told, we know you have these documents, and month after month after month, 18 of them passed, and he refused to give them back. That is the big difference. We can debate how smart Ted Cruz is, but he is definitely smart enough to know that difference. Again, this is why I think that he will never truly break through. He cannot sell that obviously there is no principle here. In the same way that his body exists day to day without a spine, his arguments exist without a single principle to unify one stance with another. What do you think, Francesca?
Oh, that never mattered. That doesn't matter. He's not gonna be president because not even Republicans like him, right? He's just a tryhard, and they can see that even when he does performative stuff like this. But again, I know what's in his heart. He's a good man. He's a friend. I'm gonna openly say he's my friend. And so because he's my friend, you should trust him. Because he's my friend, Fox News. And that's a perfect argument. It's just amazing. It is completely illogical. My guess is we're gonna have classified documents found for a very long time. I think everyone, Obama's gonna have some. Obama's gonna have some. George Bush gonna be like, oh, these? Oh, okay, you were talking about? There's gonna be so many classified. Everyone's gonna get on it and just gonna be like an endless, when we're sort of putting our hands on top of you. Anyway, it's a schoolyard thing. It's crazy. But I'm tired of this story for sure. And yes, what actually matters is that Trump tried to conceal it, and that Trump definitely, he was using them. It's not like Biden deliberately planted or kept classified documents for the instance when he became president. Then I will go back to when I was elected, to the Senate in 1918 and use them to my advantage. All that information's old at this point. No, Trump is at least I was, selling it to the highest bidder. Oops.
100%. Yeah, and so everyone watching at home, I just want you to at least think about, you don't necessarily have to state it or post it or whatever. What is your actual standard? Okay, what do you want to happen if this law was violated? First of all, do you think that intent matters? I'm generally of the opinion that I don't see why it matters so much, but you can defer on that. And then what do you think should be done if they violated the law? I mean, all three of these men violated the law. Is it too harsh to say ban them all from running for office again? Would that not at least send a signal to current officials and future officials to not violate the law, either through intent or through gross irresponsibility? Am I being naive and ridiculous because I believe we should have a standard that we apply in all cases, regardless of whether the person has the same mascot on their jacket as we do? I don't know. Apparently I'm crazy based on my experience watching cable news over the past few weeks. That said, I want to close with one just little added wrinkle of irony to this. And it's that before it was revealed that he had also taken classified documents, here is what Mike Pence was saying.
Did you take any classified documents with you from the White House?
I did not.
Do you see any reason for anyone to take classified documents with them leaving the White House?
Well, there'd be no reason to have classified documents, particularly if they were in an unprotected area.
So I would give Mike Pence at least the credit that he apparently independently decided to have his team search for these documents. And when he found them, he didn't shred them, he sent them in. So that's good. Just do that before you start talking about how you're so so superior and pure compared to these other people? You can't think of a single reason? How about neglect? Because that's your argument right now, and I think there is a case to be made that that's an okay one maybe, but you were not willing to offer that up when it was Joe Biden that was the most recent person in the news talking about this. And isn't that convenient? Anyway, Francesca, I have heard you state that you are tired of that story, so we're gonna move on until the Obama documents come out, or they dig up that casket on the Trump golf course and find more documents. So why don't we move on to other news that will probably infuriate you even more. Steve Bannon is weighing in on the political aspirations and ambitions of Marjorie Greene, and they go about as high as you can imagine. He is saying that she wants to be VP. And first of all, I would like to congratulate Steve Bannon on being on the cutting edge of political discourse. Everybody was already talking about this like 3 months ago. Anyway, but he has actually spoken with her, which is a benefit to him? Doesn't seem like one, but he does have inside information. And so here is why he feels so confident that she wants to be Trump's VP candidate. He says, this is no shrinking violet. She's ambitious. She's not shy about that, nor should she be. She's both strategic and disciplined. And I sort of get what he means with that last part. It seems weird to apply as lofty an adjective as strategic to the mind of Marjorie Greene, but anyway, he says she sees herself on the short list for Trump's VP. Paraphrasing Cokie Roberts, when MTG looks in the mirror, she sees a potential president smiling back. That's my favorite part of this, because he is explicitly talking about her being VP there, and I guess maybe he means someday she would run for president too, and why not? That seems like hell, so I'm sure we'll experience it together. But it sounds like he's saying she wants to be Trump's VP and just wait in the wings until he inevitably keels over. That's what it feels like to me, Francesca. That said, they have a second source, not just Bannon, saying that Greene, her whole vision is to be vice president. The source, who has ties to Trump, spoke on condition of anonymity, but also believes that Greene would be on Trump's shortlist. And look, this is considered like a big divisive rumor in today's news cycle. I just take this as a given. Like, yeah, she's almost certainly on the short list. I am starting to think maybe Kari Lake could edge her out. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know for sure. What do you think?
Oh God, you just planting that. I had to like swallow a little bit of vom right there. Thinking of Tulsi Gabbard as a running mate. Yeah, of course. Of course, Marjorie wants to be the running mate, and it makes sense. We can't have nice things in this country, so we will, if I were to call it, Trump gets reelected, Trump keels over, which is good. That feels good. Then Marjorie becomes president. That feels bad. Mm-hmm. And there you have it. And then we are basically in a don't look up situation with Meryl Streep, except we've got Marjorie Greene. Anyway, yeah, no, it's clear that here's what I will say. What I like about Trump is that he also loves being a wet blanket on people's dreams. Mm-hmm. Like he hates the idea that other people have ambitions other than himself, right? Or that their ambitions are not just to prop him up and his greatness. She's done a good job, right? She was, not successfully, but she was like lobbying her fellow Congress people on the floor when they were trying to vote for McCarthy, and she had Donald on the phone, right? Like mm-hmm. DJT was like, here, talk to him, he's begging us. She was doing that, she's been calling Boebert out for her lack of like loyalty. She's been doing all the things, but also she's a little, she's trying to be her own thing. And Trump doesn't like someone who's trying to be their own thing. He's going to have to play kind of if she's the nominee, a second fiddle, like a passing the torch, passing the baton situation. And I don't think he likes that. Remember when Chris Christie kind of stepped out a little bit too much? Remember when even Rudy Giuliani stepped out a little too much, and then he got beaten to submission, and he came back and he was fine. He was sort of like came back as a little puppy lapdog, and like, no, you don't have to even pay me. I will eat off the ground. I'll
rely on Cameo. Yes, I do recall that. He probably made a few royalties off of the Borat movie. I do agree that Marjorie Greene has certain pros, I think, from his point of view, that she is incurious and conspiratorial and will relentlessly attack people for incredibly personal things. I think you'll like all of that, but I agree that she might be too ambitious for him. It is also, isn't it weird that, like, I agree with you when you laid out the case that he doesn't like other people around him to have ambition. I think most people would agree with that. Isn't it weird that, like, his claim to fame before the presidency was that he hosted a show where he'd be choosing his apprentice, and he clearly doesn't want anyone else to succeed except for him, which is like the one thing you don't want in a mentor. Anyway, I think that Kari Lake might have a leg up in that respect, that I think she would be more deferential to Trump. I think that Marjorie Greene 2 years ago would be that, but I think that she's getting like a little bit big for her britches from the point of view of a Donald Trump, someone as sensitive and thin-skinned as him. Anyway, do we have the poll? I don't know if we actually, do we? No, okay, we don't. We cannot poll you about this, so I post on Twitch or on YouTube or something. Anyway, I wanna get to one other aspect of this. While many people have been being thrown off of committees in the House recently, Marjorie Greene is getting another subcommittee, and it's on something that she has done a lot of independent research on forums on the dark web, and she has spoken a lot about. It's about COVID and the government response to COVID. To remind you of her approach to the pandemic, this is a video that was taken in the middle of 2021 when she was being asked about people dying from COVID. Take a look at this.
Do you feel any responsibility for keeping people in Georgia safe? There are children, skinny people who have died of the coronavirus. Do you feel any responsibility?
Tia, can you correct me up? You know what? I think people's responsibility is their own.
I get that, like on a panel like today, it's me and it's Francesca, and she's a comedian, we're supposed to have fun and everything. I cannot tell you how much I despise that woman and everything that she stands for. That was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, and I've done countless thousands of hours of this sort of broadcasting. She was asked about her own constituents in her state dying of COVID in June of 2021, and she bust out laughing like she had just heard a really racist joke. She thought it was hilarious that people were dying, and a lot of people were dying. Of course, lots of people have died since then, but she's gonna be on the committee to investigate COVID, Francesca. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, no, when I saw that clip, the first word that came to my mind was vile. And I think that's the reaction that she causes in me. I mean, we've been covering COVID obviously since it began, and we're going on 3 years now. We're gonna hit the 3-year mark. Shy of 1 million people dying in this country. And this is someone who, she's laughing at her own joke about it. And now she's gonna, everything that she's been saying, right? All the things she's been saying about Fauci, it's only going to get worse. And she's gonna be on the political side, right? So random investigations, pulling him in front of, the committee, interrogating him. But what happens to Anthony Fauci in his life, right? How many more bodyguards is he gonna need to get? How many more death threats are going to be issued on his life? And that's just one guy in all of the many people that they're taking aim at. And let's just remember, this is a Congress that refuses to approve any more funding, not just for future pandemics, but the current COVID-19 vaccine and any kind of preparedness for its mutations. Like, there is no more money, to the point where Joe Biden, the president, is basically pulling the plug, and he's about to declare COVID-19 not an emergency anymore. That's gonna end very, very soon. And we're gonna move to these, annual flu shot like things, which there's no scientific evidence that those kinds of shots once a year will actually adequately prevent you from getting sick. And so they already won. They already won, and it's not enough because it's just not memeable enough for MTG.
Yeah, you know what, to that end, as we go to our break, I'm gonna remind you of a few of these memeable moments of Marjorie Greene when it came to COVID. We probably covered virtually every bit of this along the way, but it's very easy to forget how bad things have been. Here are a few things that she has said about COVID over time. She said that young boys shouldn't wear masks because they're emasculating. I don't know if she thinks masculating, that's the same thing. It's not, Marge, read a book. She said that a vaccine passport would be Biden's mark of the beast. She said it's fascism or communism, whatever you want to call it, but it's coming from private companies, so I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism, which is just about the dumbest term I've ever heard. And by the way, maybe it's fascism, maybe it's communism, but it's probably just one of those two things. I feel like they're different. Anyway, she said that having to wear a mask in Congress shows that Pelosi is mentally ill. She also said that having to prove that you were vaccinated is exactly the same type of abuse Jews experience being put on trains and taken to gas chambers in Nazi Germany. But again, Ilhan Omar's an anti-Semite. 3 weeks later, she said that if vaccines were provided door to door, it would be by medical brown shirts. In June of 2021, when she wasn't laughing about kids in Georgia dying of COVID, she called it a manufactured plague caused by a Chinese-made virus. In July of 2021, she said that COVID variants, including Delta, no one cares. Hundreds of thousands of families that lost people to those variants probably cared. Anyway, she joked about killing someone that would come to her door to provide vaccination. That was funny. She also said when in August of 2021 that COVID is spreading, but we're human. We can't live forever. We're gonna catch all kinds of diseases and illnesses and other viruses, which is just about as fatalistic a statement as I've ever heard from a representative of government, particularly one who's gonna be in charge of the government's oversight of COVID. But also, you'll notice that if something bad medically happens, what are you gonna do? Life is short. They don't apply that to like side effects of the vaccine, only the virus itself. Weird how that works out. Anyway, that's Marjorie Greene coming to a COVID panel near you. With that said, we're gonna take a short break. When we come back, Ticketmaster was in the spotlight on Capitol Hill today, and we'll give you all the updates after this.
By the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Go home and tell your moms. They're gonna be really excited about that.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. Joey, baby. Joey, baby.
Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there. I don't know if, I believe that I already read that Holy Beer Dragon had gifted 5 subs. Maybe Holy Beer Dragon just did it twice, but either way, thank you, you dragon, you. Okay, let's see. Beefanesi says on Twitch, are we sure John loves dogs? I've heard some things he said about Sprocket. He was ready to go with it. I think that truly loving a dog involves being able to point out the good things about them and also the big-headed things about them. Anyway, with that said, okay, members, comments. Ian says, 2 years of what did Hunter Biden know and when did he know it? That is a great, like, I am already so bone tired of hearing about Hunter Biden, and it's not gonna get any more interesting or substantive, and there are gonna be committee hearings and committee hearings. It's gonna be unbearable. Anyway, okay, let's see. Okay, wait, hold on. Is this from a member? Is T42 a member? I think that T42 is a member. I'm not sure where this is. I think it's on YouTube, but the comment from T42 is search mother's computer and bank accounts. What has mother been searching? Anyway, I love that. Thank you. Eric had said, don't forget the Benghazi hearings. I think it's gonna be a replay of those on documents, and thus even more boring. And by the way, like if they want, like they could just have a standard, say that all the documents being stolen are wrong. We're gonna investigate all of them and we're gonna burn all of them to the ground. And they could get rid of Trump. They could bring in DeSantis. Instead, it's going to be 2 years of documents investigations that try to pretend that Donald Trump stealing hundreds of times as many isn't a problem.
There should be like, it should be like a gun buyback program, but for classified documents. It's like, we don't ask any questions, just bring them back to the National Archives. We know you've got them and it's a wash.
Yeah, like every 10 documents you get an AR, anything top secret you get an extended mag. I think we could do it like that. Anyway.
No, you're supposed to give them money for you don't get the.
No, that's not how it works. Anyway, I think that was just a gun store I went to. Anyway, no, but I'm trying to make it appealing to them, Francesca.
Word. A gun buyback, but I get it. You made a jokey joke.
For
okay.
Glocks.
That's
what I would call it. Oh my God, I'm gonna set that up.
Docs for Glocks.
I could get elected as a Republican any day now. Okay, Modern Relic says Omar is clearly one of our best congresspersons. Agreed. Psychedelic Black Dragon says Fantastic Wednesday. Agreed as well. We're out of time. More news. Back everyone to what remains of the first hour of the Young Turks. Thank you for joining us. Cenk and Anna are out, although Cenk will be back tomorrow. I'm leading the first hour, and then Francesca is gonna be taking the reins for the second hour. I'm already excited, Francesca.
Me too.
Okay, we'll see together. Anyway, with that said, let's talk about one more thing. Whenever you're ready, we can jump into this.
Mr. Berchtold, I wanna congratulate and thank you for an absolutely stunning achievement. You have brought together Republicans and Democrats in an absolutely unified cause. Ticketmaster had the temerity to imply that the debacle involved in pre-ticket sales was Taylor Swift's fault because she was failing to do too many concerts. And may I suggest respectfully that Ticketmaster ought to look in the mirror and say, I'm the problem, it's me.
I've been told from people who would know that that is a lyric from a Taylor Swift song. And please, to whoever is an aide to Senator Blumenthal, stop giving them lyrics to read during congressional testimony. Anyway, look, the content is important. Ticketmaster has rightly been under fire for the past few months for their effective monopoly that has ruined the regular ticket buying experience for lots of people with needless costs and markups, as well as bringing to a crashing halt entire tours like for Taylor Swift. And so they were brought in to talk to the Senate, and there's gonna be some tough questions, and we will get to that and the facts of this. But first, here are more elderly people referencing Taylor Swift.
I believe in capitalism, and to have a strong capitalist system, you have to have competition. You can't have too much consolidation, something that unfortunately for this country, as a ode to Taylor Swift, I will say, we know all too well.
Really looking forward to my ongoing service on the antitrust subcommittee, along with Senator Klobuchar as chair. To be honest, I had hoped as of a few months ago to get the gavel back, but once again, she's chair captain and I'm on the bleachers, so.
Those representing the dominant player in the market would contend that their growth has allowed them to innovate and make advances that greatly benefit consumers. A few million Taylor Swift fans would respond, this is why we can't have nice things.
A lot of people seem to think that's somehow a solution. I think it's a nightmare dressed like a daydream.
Oh my God, it's a room full of Cenk Uygurs. Anyway, man, they just want any opportunity to have a little bit of fun. I do want to say about Senator Klobuchar, I disagree with her on a lot, and I would never want to be within stapler throwing distance of her. But she's pretty good with the mom jokes. you can see like she kind of like leans forward, like she's so excited that she's gonna tell the joke, and the delivery was better than all the rest of them. But anyway, we have a professional comedian on the panel today. Francesca,
Sean,
how do you rate them?
Oh, I think Klobuchar for sure. I agree with you. She has terrible jokes, but she knows they're terrible, so she's about to do them. But I do think the best delivery, and I can't remember, but whoever said, I'm on the bleachers, like some whatever. I don't know the lyric clearly. Mike Lee, I think because it's off the cuff, it's smooth. They're cheer captain, and I'm on the bleachers. Like that was just like just delivery wise, you just sort of snuck it in there.
Yeah.
John, look what you made me do,
Exactly, yeah. Well, look, and also it's not like a big cheering environment, so it's hard for him to know like if the joke actually landed or if it bombed. Should he just shake it off? I don't know. Anyway, I'm as cringy as them. And that's the most recent song of hers I can reference. Anyway, look, jokes aside, this is incredibly serious. Thankfully, people like Taylor Swift and some other artists have been talking about this for some time. There's been a lot of great journalism about the Ticketmaster monopoly. There was a really great episode of John Oliver a year or two ago about this whole thing. It needs to change, and I want to give you some of the facts about this. Ticketmaster currently controls over 70% of the market for ticketing and live events. Far and away the market leader. It's not technically a monopoly. I guess there are other people technically that have a very minority share that do sell tickets, but because of its market share, it gives it a dominant position, which raises concerns that it may abuse its market power. I love the use of the word may there. Anyway, it's held more than an 80% share of major concert primary ticketing since 1995. And by the way, when you throw around numbers like 70 or 80%, you think, okay, so that's 7/10. Well, at least 1/3 of the tickets. No, but like they have a monopoly over many hundreds of the most important venues. It's not like they get 70% of the shows at each place. They get all of the shows at a bunch of different places. And so if you want to come and do major shows, then you kind of have to go with them. So again, the technicalities of whether it's a monopoly or not, we can have that debate. But effectively, it is able to wield that sort of clout as of right now. And so, like, if you're watching this and if you've tried to buy tickets through Ticketmaster, you already know the effect of this. You know about how much more expensive these things are, the major fees that in some cases can be something like 80+% of the price of the ticket being added on top of it. And that's from the consumer's point of view. Of course, the actual artists have a long list of complaints about having to deal with this sort of monopoly in that they have to give very large portions of what they are producing. They're the reason people are going there, but Ticketmaster gets to take a very large percentage of that. And so I certainly understand the frustration that's been brewing, Francesca, and I really hope that they use this opportunity to do something about it.
I mean, the John Oliver segment you're referencing was about Bad Bunny tickets, which honestly I'm much more interested in personally, which at the time were like $400 to $600 a pop. But we can think it's cringe, but it is kind of great that someone like Taylor Swift has put this Live Nation Ticketmaster monopoly on notice, and we are all talking about it. And I think I have a lot of thoughts about this, but if we could only do this for other industries that matter far more than whether we get affordable tickets, but let's just take it as that. Look, you have an incredible, you have a company that specializes in being the middleman, right? They're only the middleman, and you have to deal with them. And they're putting the burden on the venue, on the actual physical venue, on the artist, and on the consumer. And none of those three entities are happy, right? They often will own the venue, so if nothing else, they're like happy with that. But in terms of like smaller venues, they get completely iced out if they're not also part of the Live Nation Ticketmaster, behemoth. And why? Or behemoth, I don't know how we pronounce this, but the reason is because let's say like, I filling stadiums, obviously, if I go and I play a Ticketmaster or a Live Nation venue in Chicago, I cannot legally, whatever I signed to play that venue, I cannot play in the Chicago area for 6 months or to a year at another smaller venue or a different venue that isn't a Live Nation venue. It's insane. So it hurts the artists and it hurts other small venues. That John and I just did a show at a venue in San Francisco for my podcast, The Bitchuation Room, that is now closing. Now, of course, this is COVID times, it's really, really hard. But also if smaller venues were able to book medium-sized acts, they could stay alive. But those medium-sized acts are being gobbled up by this whole Ticketmaster, sort of web, right? So it's terrible, and it kind of reminds me of, pay discrepancy in Hollywood. You're like, all right, well, Angelina Jolie's still making, millions and millions of dollars. Who cares if Ryan Gosling is getting more than her? It's like, wait, but it does matter, Taylor Swift and Bad Bunny, they have plenty of money. It's not a big deal. But in the case of, for example, Pearl Jam, they're trying to make tickets more affordable for consumers. Ticketmaster is making that impossible for them. So it's not that these artists can't afford it. It's that when they're trying to get rid of the middleman between them and their fans, Ticketmaster comes in and is like, no. There's going to be millions and millions of dollars in between, and no one's going to be happy.
Sure, I agree, and I'm primarily also interested more on the consumer side. But while these people are fabulously wealthy, and I don't generally spare a ton of my empathy for people who are going to be just fine either way, at least they're rich because people desperately want to see them. Like, I don't necessarily understand why you'd pay $600 to see Taylor Swift, but a lot of people want to do that. That is, she's making that. So I feel like she should benefit from it more than some corporate exec who's in a different state. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what comes out of this. If more comes from these hearings, we'll of course have it for you. For now, though, that is the end of the first hour. When we come back, Francesca Fiorentini will be taking over, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few.
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries, because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There's only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Back to TYT. I am Francesca Fiorentini here with John Idarola. We're in for Cenk and Anna. We've got another hour of stories, including the latest culture war that just dropped. John, can you even guess what it is? You probably already know.
I'm not moving on from the Eminem thing. I'm still fighting that battle in my mind right now.
Heels, damn it. We don't want kitten heels. I can't get turned on. Okay, I'm done. All right, well, we have to switch gears because there's some serious news here. A former senior FBI official in New York has been arrested and charged with money laundering, conspiracy, and violating US sanctions. That's right. It appears that he took money from the very entities that he was investigating. We're talking an Albanian intelligence officer and a Russian oligarch you might have heard of, Oleg Deripaska. The name might be familiar because, oh yeah, he was low-key working with Paul Manafort, who was working on the Trump campaign in 2016. Yes, but apparently it's all a Russian hoax, and we're crazy for covering this. But here we go. The charges against former official Charles McConnell came in separate indictments unsealed in New York and Washington, D.C. after an investigation by his own agency and federal prosecutors. In the New York case, he was charged with violating economic sanctions that the US has imposed on Russia because of its aggression in Ukraine. So more about who he was. How long did he work there? Before he retired in 2018, Mr. McGonigal had been the special agent in charge of the FBI's counterintelligence division in New York. In that post, he supervised investigations of Russian oligarchs, including Mr. Deripaska, whom the US Attorney's Office in Manhattan charged him with aiding. Mr. Deripaska is an aluminum magnate with ties to President Vladimir V. Putin. Mr. Deripaska was also, again, a client of Paul Manafort, who for several months in 2016 served as Donald J. Trump's campaign chairman, and in 2018 was convicted of financial fraud and other crimes, and of course, was pardoned. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, but if he was investigating Deripaska and Deripaska was connected to the Trump stuff, did he have any role in Robert Mueller's investigation? Yes, he did. In fact, that's fun. McGonigal had a role investigating into the Russian interference in the 2016 election, led by Robert Mueller III. I think he was involved in the Carter Page wiretap, which again was later ruled to be like illegal. I'm not sure. The point is, oh no. This is very bad. John, I just wanted your top line reaction to this before I give my thoughts.
I mean, I guess I'm not shocked. The people they're investigating are literal oligarchs. They have tons of money to throw around, which is also why I think, I don't know what the penalties are like for a person like this to commit this particular crime, if they're comparable to if I was to commit these sorts of, violating these sanctions. But I do think that people in these sorts of positions, the penalty should be far, far worse because the temptation is gonna be there. Why wouldn't the oligarchs try to bribe you? They're bribing everyone. So not super shocked by it. Lock him up if he actually did it, throw away the key, all of that. But I would also say that I think it's a bit ironic that I saw on Truth Social, because every day I take a brief glance at Donald Trump's Truth Social because I hate myself. And he said something to the effect of, like, I've been proven right. Those investigating me were working with the Russians. Yeah, but they weren't working with the Russians to like make you guilty. Like, why, how is that how this would work? You believe that investigation where this guy was being bribed vindicated you. I don't think that it necessarily did, but if the idea is that the Russians were working with you, I don't think they were bribing the investigator to make the case worse for you. Again, it's just, it's their ability to interpret literally any new fact through whatever lens they need to make it seem like they're the victim.
Absolutely, and again, it doesn't. The idea that he didn't have a role in the Mueller case and the fact that like no charges were actually brought against a sitting president because it's a sitting president, that's absurd. That maybe his role wasn't influencing that investigation. But again, what he's being indicted on is violating US sanctions because of trying to get sanctions dropped on Oleg Deripaska. So we can look into exactly what happened and how it happened. But in order to do that, you have to know that he worked alongside another guy. So the indictment in Manhattan on Monday charged a second man, Sergei Shetsakov, 69, a former Soviet and Russian diplomat who became an American citizen. Mr. Shetsakov later worked as an interpreter for the federal courts and US Attorney's Office for the Southern and Eastern Districts of New York, according to the indictment. Cool. Another guy is on the payroll anyway. But in the 2019 indictment says that Mr. McGonigal and Mr. Shetsakov introduced Agent 1, we don't know who Agent 1 is, to a law firm in New York. Agent 1 wanted to retain the firm to work to lift the sanctions on Mr. Deripaska. Mr. Deripaska personally signed an engagement letter with the firm under which he would be paying $175,000 a month, with $25,000 earmarked for certain other professionals, the indictment says. It adds that the firm retained Mr. McGonigal as a consultant and investigator, and he asked that it compensate him by sending him $25,000 to a corporation Mr. Shetsakov owned. So again, that was the number one thing, was get these sanctions dropped on me. And lo and behold, that's the violating the sanctions is now the reason that he is being indicted in part. But again, it doesn't seem like there's charges of conspiracy, but I do want to see, as John mentioned, a little bit more thrown at this guy, given that he was part of the FBI. And I want to just say, as someone who believed the Russia connections because they are there between the Trump team in 2016 and Vladimir Putin and Russia, I never believed that the Mueller investigation would bear fruit. And so I feel like we were caught in this moment where it was like, the Republicans are saying, it's a witch hunt, this and that, it doesn't exist. And then some, I think on the left, were like, this is a lib issue that only like Rachel Maddow cares about. And it's like, no. Strip it all of whatever sort of characterization you want to put on it. There's real cooperation here, right? The former Republican FBI director is not gonna be our savior. And so as someone who does not have faith in the FBI, there's part of me that's like, yeah, of course they're going to be compromised. It has happened in the past, and here it's happening now. But as someone who feels like we've been sleeping on these kinds of topics, I'm a little bit chilled to the bone that the top agency that is going after, I don't know, random peace activists and BLM organizers from time to time, is compromised in and of itself. Like that for me is chilling. Like, yes, I don't believe in a crazy security state, but I would like an intelligence state. I would like our intelligence units to not be compromised.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that all of your criticisms, both of like Mueller individually, this guy, the FBI in general, makes sense. It's why we don't work for the FBI, we work for the CIA, I read online for some reason. Anyway, yeah, I also agree about, I mean, I was maybe a little bit more uncertain about whether it would bear fruit, but I don't know, when I heard that they literally never interviewed Trump, I thought, that's probably not a good sign. That seems like a weird thing. You had years, maybe talk to the guy. And Trump is a guy who is so easy to make crack. Like,
yeah,
A Few Good Men, I never bought that Jack Nicholson would actually blurt out what he blurts out. But if it was Trump, he can't wait to confess crimes. How did they not interview him? But anyway, yeah, again, don't work at the FBI, throw the book at this guy. I got no interest in people who are in positions of important positions and are corrupt. Get rid of them.
The FBI, I just want to go to graphic 6 before we take a break. Michael J. Driscoll said, the assistant director in charge of the FBI's New York office said, the Bureau was committed to enforcing economic sanctions designed to protect the United States and its allies, saying there are no exceptions for anyone, including former FBI officials like Mr. McGonigal. You think? You think there's no exception for the dude who was charged with doing the sanctions or investigating this guy who did, and like, do they not get paid enough? Like, are we wanting for money, or is this just like, who else is trading their secrets and their positions in top level? This guy worked for 2 decades with the FBI.
Well, I mean,
so anyway.
Yeah, just really a reminder of all of the undeclared foreign agents that were working under Trump. It's like there's a lot of this going around that has actually been discovered. I am guessing that they haven't found all of them. That would be my guess.
Yeah, probably not. But you know what? It's always good when cops investigate themselves. So as long as the FBI can investigate the FBI, we will see accountability. Anyway, the DOJ clearly is taking this seriously, so that is good. And he is currently out on bail. It was a $500,000 bail. So we'll see how Mr. McGonigal's fate plays out and whether this means any kind of reform for the institution as a whole. But we got to take our first break in the second hour. Don't go nowhere. Ice cream.
Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there. A lot of comments about the Ticketmaster story. Sexy Speed Racer says, and Ticket Bastards, is that a thing? I hadn't heard that before, Ticket Bastard, I like it. Their latest scam is selling ticket insurance on top of the tickets they sell with all those fees.
Insane.
The hundreds of dollars doesn't include insurance, Jesus. Mo Fury says, Ticketmaster is to music what insurance companies are to healthcare, just a well-dressed middleman that adds cost only to pay itself. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, if it was an efficient way to sell the tickets and made it easy to resell them and didn't add a bunch of costs, then I think that would be a value add. But at this point, it's a protection racket. That's all it is, really. Okay, let's see. Muggle Reject Dragon says, how dare he besmirch Minerva's name in this manner? If you recognize it, you recognize it. Okay, Blue Lizard Guts over on Twitch says, ooh, big stretch. Me to my dog when she wakes up, and also to Republicans, 100%. Audie Dragon has been with us for 16 months over on Twitch, says, thanks for 16 months of crazy. Appreciate you, Francesca and John. Thank you so much. Imitation Asian says, I mean, this has been going on so long with Ticketmaster that it's become a long-running joke at how a ticket will be $40, but $80 after Ticketmaster tax. It took their overreach and greed and Taylor Swift for the convo to be bigger. Yeah, sometimes it takes, like someone that the public, feels really strongly about to make that breakthrough. Okay, Progressive Canuck gifted 5 memberships on YouTube. Thank you so much for that. Tracy777 as well as Jessica became members. Thank you. So too did Nina Turner's pet dragon. Love the name. Thank you for being a member. And Kus gifted 10 memberships. Thank you to everybody working to expand our community and be so welcoming. I really do appreciate it. Okay, DS aka Dragon Shepherd says, got my daughter a Dragon Squad hoodie for Christmas. It's a start. Thank you, that's really nice of you. I love the hoodies. Beli says, I wish I could get my parents to even consider watching TYT. Can't get dad away from Nora and can't get mom away from Chuck Todd.
Oof.
Oh, I feel so bad. We had to talk about him on the show this morning. He did this fawning interview of Joe Manchin and how Joe Manchin might run for president and he'd never get anywhere, but we're gonna pretend that he would. Oh, isn't it fun to have access? So I feel bad for you. And there's not much I can do in terms of advice to get her off of Chuck Todd. The only thing I can do is soften the ongoing wound a little bit, maybe by giving you a Blue Apron gift card. So send an email to rewards@tyt.com with your first name, your last name, and the handle Blee South Dakota to get your Blue Apron gift card, and I hope that makes you feel better. Maybe just like take the remote and change the channel, I don't know. Find somebody on TYT, maybe she'll like Francesca, maybe she'll like JR, or show her Nina Turner. She's really passionate. I mean, she doesn't have the goatee of a Chuck Todd, the finely crafted facial hair, but she does have authenticity, experience, both life and political. Anyway, maybe that'll break through. Okay, more news coming up. Be right back.
Welcome back to TYT. Francesca Fiorentini and John Iadarola with you. We still have some stories, including, again, the latest culture war debacle, the thing we've decided to get mad about today. But first, let's jump into this.
The issue of abortion is not just a legal issue. And it's not just about making abortion illegal in the country. I would tell you, I'm working to make abortion unthinkable in this country.
Yes, that was Oklahoma Republican James Lankford saying he's gonna fight thought abortions to never be able to think of, what was it again? Anyway, on the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, which once again was rendered not a right anymore, thanks to the Dobbs decision this past summer by the Supreme Court. And if you think that little tirade was any worse, you were right. It got worse. Take a look.
Because we look past the convenience and look to this child's face and to say, why does that child not deserve life like every one of us? Because at its most basic level, there is no difference between any one of us in this room and when we were at this stage right here in our mother's womb, except for time.
I would argue he's correct. There is no difference than the Republican Party being just little sort of underdeveloped fetuses, just babies, just small, undeveloped, maybe zygotes even. There is no difference than the Republican Party and just little meandering zygotes in uteruses. That's it. Mm-hmm. So there he is. That is James Lankford saying he wants to get rid of the even thought of abortion. And I think it really is setting us up for absolutely the floating of proposals and legislation like fully defunding Planned Parenthood, something that Lauren Boebert wants to do, to trying to claw against codifying Roe v. Wade. This is something that Democrats have been trying to say that they're going to do now with the majority in the Senate. I believe they could potentially pick off 5 Republicans to actually get it across the finish line in the House. But John, I'm wondering what you think. Now that they've gotten their wish, Roe v. Wade has effectively been overturned, they're still going for more.
Well, I can't think about abortion because it's unthinkable now. Also, I'm distracted by him and his whole vibe. I would like to nominate him to be their messenger on issues of abortion for multiple reasons, many of them probably self-evident, but also because he doesn't seem to get how wildly unpopular everything that he's calling for will be. Credit to him for continuing to wage this deeply unpopular war, despite the best efforts of his party's leadership, which wants to pretend that it's recalibrating on abortion. I love the two approaches that the Republican Party has taken, after the experience of the midterms. So they saw their worst nightmares have come true. The American people saw something that the Republicans did that was truly terrible and unpopular, and they voted accordingly. And the Republican Party, on the one hand, with people like Ronna McDaniel, decided, we should probably pretend we don't like this anymore, so we're gonna recalibrate. We're gonna lie to the voter about what we wanna do going forward, what we're actively doing in a number of different states. And then you have the James Lankfords, which are like, this is wildly unpopular on a national level, and even in states like Kansas, they're voting down our constitutional amendments. Whatever, have we not made clear that we don't care about democracy? We're just gonna do it anyway. And so, good, have at it. Like, don't actually have at it, because these are fundamental rights and people's lives and livelihood are on the line. But keep talking about it. Keep reminding people of how deeply out of the mainstream you are. I'm fine with that, Francesca.
Absolutely. And speaking of someone who is perfectly fine to be out of the mainstream, but also kind of positioning herself along the, sort of America's Next Top MAGA lady, is Kristi Noem, who in response to the FDA saying that they will approve federally of pharmaceutical abortions, mifepristone and misoprostol, that I'm totally butchering, but medically induced over-the-counter abortion pills should be legal and accessible in all 50 states, no matter what the laws on the books in those states state about abortion themselves. Here's Kristi Noem responding to that in a tweet, saying that she says chemical abortions remain illegal in South Dakota no matter what Biden's FDA says. Today, AG Jack Lee and I wrote to pharmacists across South Dakota to remind them that their resources should be focused on helping mothers and their babies before birth and after. Sure, I'd like to see that, South Dakota. South Dakota, have you expanded Medicaid? Do you support young mothers in poverty who do not have, or not even in poverty, who just can't make ends meet to have healthcare? I don't think you have. In fact, I don't even need to check that, because most red states do not expand Medicaid. But so she is taking a step to fight the new FDA ruling that allows pharmacies to offer abortion pills. The policy change, this is graphic 2, or let's see, let's look at the graphic 1. The letter says, after Roe v. Wade was reversed last year, abortion became illegal in South Dakota, except to save the life of the pregnant person. It's one of 14 states where abortions are now largely unavailable. In South Dakota, any person who administers, prescribes, or procures for any pregnant female any medicine or drug with the intent to induce an abortion is guilty of a felony. So sorry, that is part of the latter part, is part of the letter. You're gonna be guilty of a felony if you prescribe, if you give, or if you take an abortion pill. Great. So one more thing working against pregnant people who don't want to be pregnant. It was a policy change long advocated by medical experts and rights campaigners. The Food and Drug Administration earlier this year formalizing a regulatory change to allow retail pharmacies in the US to dispense mifepristone, one of 2 drugs often taken in tandem for a medication abortion. But the letter continues saying, under South Dakota law, pharmacies, including chain drugstores, are prohibited from procuring and dispensing abortion-inducing drugs with the intent to induce an abortion, and they are subject to felony prosecution. So it goes on and on and on and on. And so it is, look, even with the medically induced abortion, it's still a risk, right? It is definitely, depending on how early in the pregnancy it is, it's definitely better. But we're talking about all kinds of reproductive care here. So it's criminalizing people's bodies. And it's saying also that, let's say you do get the abortion pill. Let's say you do take it. And let's say there's any kind of complication. You could be in a hospital and wake up and have handcuffs on you because you've been convicted of a felony. You've been and you are under suspicion. So it puts everyone on watch. all the hospital staff, puts the pharmacists on staff. And so now they're effectively, they're looking for you criminal who simply is a person who does not want to have a child. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and let's add on, of course, that multiple Republican politicians are talking. We just had, I believe it was Mike Braun on video on a podcast talking about how as long as people are able to drive across state lines, then that's not good enough. We have to go farther. We can't just strip away the rights in our state. We have to lock people up if they go to a place that has respect for basic human rights. So look, we say all of this not to try to persuade you to have respect for these rights. We have the luxury of not truly needing to do that. People have been on our side, on the side of people having access to abortion and other reproductive care for decades and decades and decades. That's simply the truth. We only talk about this to remind you that the fight to strip away more and more rights is ongoing at the federal level, at the state level, and we need to be vigilant because they're not just gonna willingly give this up, even after the death of Roe v. Wade.
No, exactly, and I just have to say, like, I'm calling on a lot like cis men to stand up. Like, we all need to understand what role we have to play in this. And so if you are in a state where the abortion laws have drastically changed, what can you do? How can you support people who are pregnant? How can you support people who are seeking abortions? What can you drive them somewhere? Can you help them get out of state? Like, it is on all of us. Like, can we talk to our family members? And so again, because this is all about the supremacy of men to do whatever the hell they want with other people's bodies. So if you have a certain amount of privilege, if you are a guy, I'd like to see you use that. I'd like to see you use that in your state, in your community, in your family. How are you gonna step up for reproductive rights? We all came from the uterus, people. Mitch McConnell hasn't figured out a matrix himself more Mitch McConnells yet. So respect the goddamn uterus.
Yeah.
All right? As someone who just had a kid, I respect it a whole hell of a lot. I do want to talk about how Democrats are talking, how Democrats are fighting back, if they are fighting back. And John, get your opinions. Here is a little snippet from kind of an ad the Senate Democrats put out on the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade and them vowing to fight for reproductive rights. Take a look.
The fight for abortion rights didn't end 50 years ago when Roe was decided, and it did not end last year when Roe was overturned. We are not giving up.
We should be standing here celebrating the 50th anniversary of Roe, but instead we are here fighting for a person's right to control their own body.
And now that national protection under the Supreme Court is gone, and young people have fewer freedoms than their moms, their grandmas.
This is happening because extremist Republicans decided that they knew better than women whose lives and stories they will never know.
We are the bulwark. When the American people voted for a Democratic Senate and even increased our number against all odds, they were saying, protect women's rights, and we will.
Okay, so there's Chuck Schumer mustering his we will, and we look, I'd like to see it. And the one thing I want to say, I'm glad the Senate Democrats are talking about it. I don't mean to throw, their press conference under the bus. But there's something that strikes me when I watch that, which is all of those Senate Dems, all of the women, no disrespect, they're all over the age of getting pregnant and having kids. Like they're all quite aged out of the I need an abortion time frame, right? Which is why I do think it was great when Representative Pramila Jayapal spoke about getting an abortion herself. I believe other legislators have as well. But it just makes me feel like, God, we need younger people representing us. And I don't mean 25-year-olds. I don't mean 35-year-olds. I just like a 40-year-old would be tight. You know what I mean? Just like on the cusp of still being of reproductive age, maybe having decided to have kids or not, right? Like, is that too much to ask? Because this is so irrelevant to these geezers. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. Look, you don't need to convince me that we need younger.
People are gonna get mad at me.
Representation.
Mad. It's fine.
That could also have the secondary effect of maybe the language in those sorts of speeches being a little bit more inclusive and all that. But I do think, at least in this particular topic, it doesn't bother me nearly as much because, and you heard a little bit of this in, it might have been Senator Hirono's speech. It was illegal, I think. Adds a little bit to what they're saying, that they have lived for decades and decades and decades of this being a right, and now it's being stripped away. I think that the age actually maybe helps a little bit in this particular case. Also, of course, this is one of the areas where the Democrats feel freed up to vigorously defend popular things, because largely the economic elite don't find this sort of debate to be particularly important to their concerns. Now, if you started to talk about, making all of these services be covered by insurance and all that, then you're gonna get some pushback and you're gonna find some of your support fall away amongst elected Democrats. But this is an area where traditionally they have felt very comfortable being out front defenders of people's interests because it's very popular and it doesn't rock the economic boat that much. They've been pretty good. They weren't able to strip away the filibuster. People like Kirsten Sinema value that supposed tradition that she doesn't even understand particularly well, far more than people's bodily autonomy and everything. But aside from her, the senators have been pretty good.
I can't wait to see that moment where she has to defend the filibuster over abortion rights.
I mean, that was the experience we had of the past couple of years. It was impossible to pass a bill like that because she was never going to get rid of the filibuster.
Yes, I want to see her. We should bring back the talking filibuster.
Yep.
Just to see her trying to defend that indefensible position. Anyway, we have to take our second break for the second hour. Don't go anywhere. We got comments and stories after this. Ice cream.
Welcome back, everyone. Okay, let's see what's going on out there. Burrito Bandito says, Lankford's right, save the baby, abort the senator. That would be pretty late term, but we'll talk about it. Okay, Fefe says, imagine being so pro-life and looking so deathly. Sure, no, for me it was the vibe. It was that weird thing he did where he was like, you would want to be alive. Can you act like a human? Can you act like you weren't just taken out of like the closet of a castle or something? Anyway, okay, what else is going on out there? Okay. Kashka the Merc says he was such a mountain of charisma. How do we compete? Anyway, okay, Stilgy over on Twitch says, as a white cis male, hell yes, we have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. We need to use our privilege, reproductive rights, trans rights, standing up for people of color, and much more. I agree. Doc Tucson says Gnome is a Bond villain. I could see that. Okay, Progressive Boomer says Ice Cream Wednesday with John and Francesca, almost as good as a pint of Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia. He was right on the trigger for that one. Bart, are you a fan of the Cherry Garcia? Is that a good one?
It's all right.
It's okay. It's not my favorite.
It's fine.
Come on.
No, I like the dark chocolate though. I like that it's got dark chocolate.
I like Americone Dream, the Stephen Colbert ice cream. So good.
People love that.
Americone Dream is pretty good. That cinnamon buns and Justice Remixed is good. It's a little bit spicy with the heavy cinnamon, but it's good. Okay.
I'm hungry now.
Let's see. Left in Oz says, I can't believe how expensive tickets to concerts cost these days, and don't forget the $25 parking fee at the venue. Yeah, parking is ridiculous. Can we have nationalized parking? I've gone to Angel City Football Club, the soccer club in LA. We go to the game sometimes, and the tickets are not particularly expensive. The parking is $50.
Jesus.
Like the spot's still gonna be there tomorrow. This is not like, this is a renewable resource, parking. How can it possibly cost $50? How much does the cement cost?
Can we just name that, like, it is so, for a society that's so atomized and isolating already, like the United States, when we do try to go out to be live with one another safely in this semi-post pandemic era, we just get effed anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, no wonder. It's too expensive. Who can afford to actually go anyway? That's, I digress, but.
The spots are too damn high. Okay, Chaplain Fred said in a super chat, hello, Miss Fiorentini and Dragon Papa. Just wanted to say blessings to you and your newborn, Miss Fiorentini. Regarding Cancun Cruz, maybe the FBI should also visit his home and find files. I don't think anyone was letting him look at particularly classified documents. I'm sure he'd like to, but. Okay, Meredith Putvin says oxymoron, Republican ethics. Well, destroying the ethics committee, very consistent for them. And Sherry says, oh hell yeah, my favorites. How nice of you. Here's more news.
Ice cream.
Back to what remains of TYT here on a Wednesday. I'm Francesca Fiorentini. That is John Idarola. There is so much more to get to, including this.
It's not that it's actually going to offset emissions, okay? The level of reduction is infinitesimal, but they're trying to recruit your kids into climate politics at an earlier age. Make them climate conscious now.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. You're right. They're going after the children.
Of course they are.
There you go. That is Fox and Friends telling you that there is a new front in the culture war, and it is the Xbox that is going after your children. Why? Because it's got a new power-saving feature, which is woke because it's green and trying to stop. What? I can't even get through this. I don't know what to say. It all started, however, Xbox started it. You know, they put on the kitten heels. They changed them for the sneaks, because starting today, Xbox insiders will notice their Xbox Series XS consoles automatically update to the shutdown energy saving power option. This one-time update to your power settings will reduce your power consumption while your console is off. So you can adjust your settings at any time, choosing what works best for you, but this is just the update that will standardize it, that will shut down the power at a certain time. And that, I think, is what they're talking about, John. They think it's woke. I think there's more to that, Saad. Do we have? Let's watch the full discussion.
So Xbox has also announced they're going woke too, and because of climate change, that they're adding a new feature to their default settings. So if you own an Xbox, you can upload this new program, and it will turn off after so long to save the environment, the power. And also, they're saying the energy-saving shutdown feature is going to have a slower boot time. Ted Cruz writes on Twitter, first gas stoves, then your coffee. Now you're gunning for my Xbox.
Isn't it crazy though? Like when we were kids, you were a rebel if you had like a leather jacket and a pack of cigarettes. Now you have like a full powered Xbox and you're eating pizza rolls on a gas stove. I mean, it's crazy what they're doing, but we understand what this is. It's not that it's actually going to offset emissions, okay? The level of reduction is infinitesimal, but they're trying to recruit your kids into climate politics at an earlier age. Make them climate conscious now.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. You're right. They're going after the children.
Of course they are. But again, what's the point of video games? It's for kids to be kids. Now you sit down and pick up a controller and they're like, by the way, the world's on fire. Ah! You know what I mean? You just want to play the game.
I just want to live in my ignorance. Oh my God, I just want to, the kids, just be a kid. First of all, like as someone who grew up in California, we would like make up songs about the drought because there was no water. So it's hard to deny reality, John, when you're living in the world and not in an Xbox game.
Yeah, they have made their M&M segments seem well-informed and relevant by comparison, because at least when they're saying this company went woke, okay, I guess making the mascot female kind of fits into that stupid rhetorical construct you have. This has nothing to do with any of that. It has so little to do with that the co-host there, the woman that you saw in the video, she hadn't even thought of the fact that it was this woke thing going after the kids. She wasn't even aware of that. That's how dumb it is. That even other right wingers aren't. By the way, be on alert for certain types of people when they talk to you about the news. I'm not saying that everyone in the news has to have super deep knowledge about everything they discuss, but you should at least avoid saying things like, once you upload the program, have you literally ever used a device like this? She has no idea what a feature like this is. He doesn't either, because the fact that it is changing a little bit of its behavior when the device is asleep is the sort of built-in functionality for every computer, every laptop, every phone. All of them have energy saving modes. Did they all go woke? Also be on alert for people like that guy who say they're trying to indoctrinate your kids into climate consciousness. Who's they? Is it Xbox? What does Xbox care about that? How does that have anything to do with what Xbox is doing? And also fundamentally, this is a feature that only affects your Xbox when it's not being used in the middle of the night. It couldn't have a less intrusive effect on your life if it tried. But the most important point that I want to make, Francesca, and I apologize for going on, obviously I care about this because I'm a gamer and I care about climate change, is you could almost have a bit of sympathy for the right wing when they say something like, I don't want to buy an EV to fight climate change, it's too expensive or something like that. That's where, okay, I think you're being short-sighted and not seeing that we should be driving down the cost of these things, but at least it's like, I don't want to give up this thing to fight climate change. In this case, there's no benefit to leaving it out. It's just upside. You may not think it's a particularly big upside, but it's a gaming company. They're not in charge of like worldwide tanker shipping and everything. This is what they can do. Here, they are looking for opportunities to willingly emit more. They would prefer, given the choice, with no cost to them otherwise, they would prefer to pollute more, to fill the atmosphere with more carbon, to put out more small particulate matter and all that. They just want more emissions, all else being equal. And that is super weird from a party that says that they're all about protecting the health of kids.
Yes, that they relish in the idea that we are destroying the planet. And that is their right. That's their right as an American. And they've equated guzzling more gas at your own expense, right? At the expense of not only your pocketbook, because yes, this would save your energy costs. That's what Xbox is saying that it would do when it's not being used, but it's at the expense of your own health. And that is supposedly a virtue. It's like if you die young because of asthma or drinking tainted water, or just like whatever
cancer,
it is,
respiratory illness, all sorts of problems, heart disease,
cancer. Thank you. That is a virtue. That to the right wing is a virtue, because as long as we just keep on loving the fossil fuel industry, can we talk about like corporate control finally? Can we talk about who is being bought and sold? Can we talk about like again, how much money is soaked through Fox that they have to do these ridiculous segments that mean nothing? Anyway, obviously Senator Ted Cruz did not miss the opportunity to jump on the story, tweeting first gas stoves, then your coffee. Now they're gunning for your Xbox. First of all, I think the coffee is just naturally what's happening because of climate change, just like what's happening with, chocolate and other things, wine and other things that we like. But like the gas stoves things, guys, it's a 42% increase in childhood asthma. This is not nothing. It's not 5, it's not 10, it's not 15, it's a 42% increase. Look, I like cooking on a gas stove. I think it's nice. It's cool. I would say I like cooking with gas, but literally the gas industry put that into our brains.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, yay, get triggered by an Xbox. We gotta move on to our final story. I do want to get to this because it is a crazy one. So this is it love? Is it not love? You guys tell me. Last weekend though, a 76-year-old woman shot her terminally ill husband in a hospital where he was staying as part of a suicide pact. That's right. The problem is, my girl didn't go through with her part of the pact. She offed her husband, did not off herself. Here are the details. Jerry Gilliard, a 77-year-old terminally ill man, made a pact with his wife about 3 weeks ago. The authorities said that if his failing health did not improve, he wanted his 76-year-old wife, Ellen Gilliard, or Gilland, to kill him. His health did continue to decline. So shortly before 11:30 a.m. on Saturday, Ellen brought a gun inside Advent Health Hospital in Daytona Beach. No idea how she got the gun inside. Went to Jerry's room on the 11th floor and fatally shot him in the head. After doing so, however, she panicked. She did not kill herself. She did not leave. She just kind of stayed. Police tried to get her out of there for 4 hours before they used a flashbang and a taser. She's now being held in the Volusia County Jail, and she's been charged with first-degree murder. I just want to show you a little bit. I think we have some video of the moment they're trying to coax her out of this hospital. It's kind of intense, although we do not see a lot of gore, but still trigger warning, I guess.
Can we evacuate some patients from the adjoining room? Can we do that or no?
Drop the gun, man!
I got a good angle right here.
Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
Man, hold on. You gotta build dialogue. Man, tell me what's going on. Tell me I don't want to hurt you. We don't want to hurt you. Tell me what's going on. Just talk to me. Talk to me. What's going on? Why can't you drop the gun? Why can't you drop the gun?
Because I'll probably go to jail when this is all over. So let's just take some photos. It's a pretty morbid, devastating story. There they are, Ellen Gilland and her husband, who was terminally ill, Jerry. And this was them 50 years earlier. They've been married for 50 years. There they are as a young couple. It ended terribly. And John, before I could get to you, I do just want to say, there is something called dying with dignity, right? And in some states, it is legal. Most states, it is not. However, we don't talk about this when someone is terminally ill and they would like to pass sooner rather than more painfully, potentially later. Florida lawmakers this was in Florida, introduce a death with dignity bill for the first time in 2020. The bill, called the Florida Death with Dignity Act, died in the Senate Health Policy Committee after legislators failed to bring it up for a vote. If it had passed, the law would have functioned like Oregon's Death with Dignity Act, allowing terminally ill patients who met certain requirements to request and use life-ending medication. John?
Yeah, so first of all, we start off the story saying that they had this pact. Has that been... That's like a fact that's established that this was a pact, and she's not just saying we had a pact?
Authorities say that that's what happened.
Okay. So look, I'm glad that you tied it in with the dying with dignity, because obviously this touches on a lot of really important issues, and I think that it is super weird that people would be against, again, under certain conditions, evaluation, blah blah blah, someone choosing to end their life. It's the sort of topic, I don't know, like for me, it's like caring that someone smokes weed, like. What does this have to do with you? I don't understand why you would be involved in the decision of a 76-year-old man who's terminally ill to end it a bit earlier if that's what he chooses to do. And the fact that it might drive people to do something like this is horrid. I am assuming she balked at her side of it because she had just seen what it's like when someone gets shot in the head. I would personally say that there's gotta be another way to do this, because that just sounds like a truly horrible way to end that 50 years of marriage. I understand that that was apparently what he wanted, but God, that sounds rough. Anyway, also, by the way, the cops seemed pretty responsible there. They seem to really want to avoid shooting this woman, and that is nice to see.
Yeah, for once, even though guns drawn, a little bit scary. I just want to say one thing. I do think we need death with dignity laws, but we also need universal health care so that if someone is ill, they can maintain life for as long as they want without incurring horrible amounts of medical debt for their surviving family members. This is we're in a country that the sanctity of life, but like what? We're flooded with guns, And we're nothing but hospital bills. We're walking hospital and medical bills, right? The number one cause of bankruptcy and debt in this country is medical debt. So there is a lot that needs to change. I don't know what is in it for her, but maybe she will regret that she didn't make good on her end of the pact here. That was a fun, horrible note to end this 2-hour show on, John. You're welcome.
A little bit of a downer. Thanks.
I'm so happy to host with you. That's all the time we have, but of course there's a bonus show for the members. Everybody, follow John, listen and watch the Damage Report every single day on this network, as well as the Bituation Room, which is a podcast, my podcast. And we'll see you mañana. Bye.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them, turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former